Zawadi was born in the peaceful village of Iseva, a place where the sun rose over golden fields and the rivers flowed with the songs of birds. She was raised by her loving father, a hard-working man who always made sure she never lacked anything. Though they were not rich, their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and love. Zawadi grew up to be a kind-hearted young woman, known throughout the village for her gentle spirit and willingness to help others. Everything changed the day her father brought home Nabira, the woman he chose to be his new wife. At first, Zawadi tried to welcome her stepmother with open arms, hoping that she would bring happiness to their home, but it did not take long for Zawadi to realize that Nabira was not the kind of woman who could love or care for her. From the moment she stepped into their house, Nabira made it clear that she had no place in her heart for Zawadi. She was a woman filled with jealousy, and for reasons Zawadi could not understand, she seemed to hate her. At first, the cruelty came in small, quiet ways. Nabira would scold Zawadi for the smallest mistakes, take away her food, and give her the hardest chores in the house. But as time went on, her hatred grew stronger. She made Zawadi work from sunrise to sunset, scrubbing floors, fetching water, and cooking meals while she sat back and watched. No matter how hard Zawadi worked, it was never enough for Nabira. She found ways to punish her for things she did not do, and if Zawadi ever dared to complain, she would threaten to throw her out of the house. Zawadi's father saw the way Nabira treated his daughter, but he said nothing. He was blinded by love, afraid of upsetting his new wife. Whenever Zawadi tried to speak to him, he would sigh and tell her to be patient. "She will change," he would say. But Nabira never changed. If anything, she became worse. The villagers began to notice the way Nabira treated Zawadi. They whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in pity. Some even tried to talk to Zawadi's father, but he refused to listen. Zawadi, too, remained silent. She did not want to cause trouble, and she still hoped that one day her father would stand up for her. But deep inside, she knew that the motherly love she longed for would never come from Nabira. Instead, all she could do was endure. As the years passed, Zawadi grew into a beautiful young woman. Her soft, kind eyes and warm smile made her beloved in the village. But it was not just her beauty that captured hearts. It was the way she treated others, always helping those in need and speaking with gentle wisdom. Many young men admired her, hoping to win her heart. Among them was Mubarak, the son of the village chief, a strong and well-respected man. He was drawn not only to Zawadi's beauty, but to the kindness that radiated from her. One day, Mubarak's family sent a proposal to Zawadi's father, asking for her hand in marriage. When Nabira heard about the proposal, her jealousy burned hotter than ever. She could not stand the thought of Zawadi finding happiness, especially with such an important man. The idea of Zawadi becoming the wife of a chief's son, living in comfort and love, filled her with rage. She knew that if Zawadi married Mubarak, she would escape her grasp forever. Nabira could not let that happen. She needed Zawadi to remain under her control, a servant in her own home. Determined to ruin Zawadi's chances, Nabira made her life even more miserable. She doubled her workload, forcing her to wake up before dawn and work until long after sunset. Zawadi was made to fetch heavy pots of water from the river, scrub every inch of the house until her fingers were raw, and cook endless meals that she was barely allowed to eat. No matter how tired she was, she could not rest. If she ever slowed down, Nabira would scold her, calling her lazy and ungrateful. Days turned into weeks, and the endless work began to take a toll on Zawadi's body. Her hands became rough and bruised, her feet sore from walking long distances without rest. The once bright spark in her eyes started to fade, yet she said nothing. She did not complain, hoping that one day things would change. But Nabira was not done with her cruelty. To make sure Mubarak would lose interest in Zawadi, Nabira spread lies around the village. She told people that Zawadi was not fit to be a wife, that she was weak and cursed with misfortune. She whispered to Mubarak's family that marrying Zawadi would bring shame to their household. Slowly, the rumors took hold, and Mubarak's family hesitated. The proposal was delayed, and soon it seemed like Mubarak had begun to believe the lies himself. Zawadi, unaware of the full extent of Nabira's schemes, continued to endure the suffering. Her body grew weaker, but her spirit still held on, even as hope slowly slipped from her grasp. That evening, after an exhausting day of endless chores, Zawadi finally found a moment to rest. Her body ached, her hands were blistered, and her feet felt as if they would give out beneath her. But before she could sit down, Nabira's sharp voice echoed through the house, calling her to the kitchen. Zawadi obeyed without hesitation, knowing that any delay would only lead to more punishment. She walked into the smoky kitchen, where Nabira stood by a large pot of boiling water. The smell of the evening meal filled the air, but there was nothing warm about the way Nabira looked at her. Without warning, Nabira's anger exploded. Her jealousy, frustration, and hatred for Zawadi boiled over like the water in the pot. She accused Zawadi of being lazy, of trying to gain the favor of the villagers with her fake kindness. Her voice rose, shaking with fury. Before Zawadi could respond, Nabira grabbed the pot with both hands and in one swift motion flung the scalding water straight into Zawadi's face. A piercing scream tore through the house as the boiling water burned Zawadi's delicate skin. The pain was unbearable, like fire consuming her flesh. She collapsed to the ground, clutching her face, her cries echoing through the night. Her skin blistered instantly, and the once smooth beauty that had made Nabira so envious was now marred by deep, painful scars. Zawadi's father was called to the scene. He stood frozen at the doorway, his face pale with shock. He saw his daughter writhing on the floor, her hands trembling as she tried to ease the unbearable pain. But instead of rushing to help her, instead of demanding justice, he did nothing. Fear gripped his heart. Fear of Nabira's wrath, fear of losing her love. His lips parted, but no words came. He simply stood there, watching as his daughter suffered before him. The villagers, having heard Zawadi's painful cries, gathered outside the house. Their hearts ached at the sound of her suffering. Some tried to rush in, but Nabira blocked the doorway, her eyes blazing with cold fury. She warned them to stay back, declaring that Zawadi had brought this upon herself, that this was her punishment. And so, the people stood outside, helpless, whispering among themselves, their anger growing. Zawadi lay on the cold floor, tears mixing with the burning pain on her skin. She had endured Nabira's cruelty for years, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Her heart ached, not just from the pain, but from the betrayal of the one person who was supposed to protect her. Her father had turned his back on her, and the world that once felt full of hope now felt unbearably dark. The days that followed were the hardest of Zawadi's life. Her once radiant face was now covered in painful scars, a reminder of the cruelty she had endured. The burns had left her skin rough and uneven, and every movement sent sharp stabs of pain through her body. But despite the unbearable suffering, she refused to break. She did not cry in front of Nabira. She did not beg for pity. Instead, she forced herself to wake up every morning and carry on with her chores as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Deep inside, a heaviness settled in her heart. The pain wasn't just physical. It was the way people looked at her now. When she walked through the village to fetch water, the whispers followed her like a shadow. Women would glance at her, then quickly turn away, their eyes filled with pity or disgust. Children, who once greeted her with smiles, now stared with wide, fearful eyes. Some even ran away, calling her cursed. Mubarak, the chief's son, who had once admired her beauty and kindness, stopped visiting. He had promised to ask for her hand in marriage, but now he avoided her entirely. Zawadi could feel the distance growing, the way his eyes flickered with hesitation when their paths crossed. Her heart ached, but she told herself that it was for the best. Who would want to marry a girl with a face like hers? Nabira, on the other hand, was more satisfied than ever. She no longer had to worry about Zawadi attracting suitors or escaping her grasp. The villagers no longer spoke of Zawadi's beauty or kindness. Instead, they murmured that she must have done something terrible to deserve such a fate. Nabira watched as Zawadi suffered in silence, a smug smile on her lips. Despite everything, Zawadi did not allow herself to crumble. Though her body was weak and her spirit wounded, she pushed through each day, carrying heavy loads, scrubbing the floors, and cooking meals, all while her stepmother watched without a hint of gratitude. The pain in her face was constant, a burning reminder of what she had lost. But the pain in her heart, the loneliness, the betrayal, the loss of her dreams was even worse. She had once believed that things would get better, that her father would one day see the truth, that Mubarak would still love her, that the villagers would stand up for her. But now, all of that seemed like a distant dream. She was alone, trapped in a world that no longer saw her as anything more than a broken, scarred girl. One quiet night, as Zawadi lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling, she heard a soft knock at the door. She hesitated, her heart pounding. No one ever came to see her, not anymore. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Mzee, the village elder and healer, standing before her. His wise eyes studied her face, not with pity, but with understanding. Without a word, he stepped inside and sat down, motioning for her to do the same. "I have watched you suffer," Mzikazi said gently, "but I have also seen the fire in your spirit. You are not broken, Zawadi. You are only beginning to learn your true strength." Tears welled up in Zawadi's eyes. No one had spoken to her with kindness in a long time. She wanted to believe his words, but how could she? She was scarred, abandoned, and forgotten. Mzikazi took her hands in his and began to teach her the secrets of ancient healing. He showed her how to use herbs to soothe pain, how to mix special oils to restore her skin, and how to cleanse not only wounds but the soul itself. More than that, he taught her that healing was not just about the body, it was about the heart, about finding the strength to rise above pain and betrayal. "Pain is a teacher," he told her one evening as they ground medicinal leaves together. "It can break you, or it can make you wiser. The world may be cruel, but remember this: what is done in darkness will one day be brought to light. Those who hurt others will face their own justice." Day by day, Zawadi began to change. She applied the herbs Mzikazi gave her, and though her scars did not fully disappear, her skin became healthier, and the constant pain began to fade. More importantly, her heart started to mend. She no longer walked with her head down. She no longer flinched when people whispered about her. She began to see herself not as a victim, but as someone with strength, someone with a purpose. She started helping Mzikazi treat the sick, and as she did, something incredible happened. The villagers, who once looked at her with pity or fear, began to see her differently. They saw her kindness, her wisdom, her ability to heal not just wounds, but broken spirits. And slowly her beauty, deeper than skin, stronger than before, began to shine once more. When Nabira notices that Zawadi is no longer the weak, broken girl she used to control, her rage burns hotter than ever. She watches with jealousy as Zawadi regains her strength, as her scars no longer define her, and as the villagers begin to admire her for her healing abilities. This was not what Nabira wanted. Zawadi was supposed to suffer, to remain beneath her, to never rise again. Determined to crush Zawadi's spirit once and for all, Nabira begins whispering poison into the ears of the villagers. "She is not healing people," she says with a sneer. "She is using dark magic." At first, people hesitate to believe her. They have seen Zawadi's kindness, felt her gentle hands tending to their wounds. But rumors are like fire. They spread fast. And soon, doubt begins to creep into their hearts. Not satisfied with mere gossip, Nabira takes her cruelty a step further. She goes to an old acquaintance, Mimi, a ruthless and violent man feared by many in the village. He has a reputation for treating women like property, for ruling his home with an iron fist. Nabira knows that if Zawadi becomes his wife, she will be trapped in a life of misery, unable to escape. One evening, Nabira storms into Zawadi's small room with a triumphant smile. "Pack your things," she commands. "You are to be married by the next moon." Zawadi's heart stops. "Married? To whom?" "To Mimi," Nabira replies, watching Zawadi's reaction with delight. "You should be grateful. A girl like you, scarred and worthless, should take whatever she can get." Zawadi's body trembles with fear. She knows what kind of man Mimi is. If she is forced to marry him, her life will become an endless nightmare. She looks around, searching for a way out. But Nabira has planned this too well. The walls are closing in, and for the first time in a long while, Zawadi feels the suffocating grip of hopelessness creeping back into her soul. Zawadi knows that if she gives in now, her life will be lost to misery forever. She refuses to let Nabira decide her fate. With a heart full of courage, she stands before her stepmother and, for the first time, speaks without fear. "I will not marry Mimi," she says firmly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I am not your servant. I am not your prisoner. You have no right to control my life." Nabira's face twists with rage. "You ungrateful girl. After everything I have done for you." Zawadi meets her gaze without flinching. "Everything you have done," she repeats, her voice filled with pain. "You burned my face. You stole my happiness. And now you want to sell me to a monster. No more, Nabira. No more." For the first time, Nabira is caught off guard. She expected Zawadi to cry, to beg, to surrender like she always did. But this Zawadi is different. She is stronger. She is fearless. With her decision made, Zawadi knows she must act fast before Nabira finds another way to destroy her. She gathers her courage and goes straight to Chief Kamisi, the leader of the village. When she arrives at his home, her heart is pounding, but she refuses to let fear silence her. She kneels before him and says, "Great Chief, I have come to seek justice. Chief Kamisi, a wise and fair leader, looks at her with concern. Speak, child. Taking a deep breath, Zawadi tells him everything. How Nabira tormented her, how she was burned, how she was forced into slavery in her own home, and now, how she is being sold off to a cruel man against her will. Her voice does not shake. She speaks with the strength of someone who has suffered, but refuses to break. The chief listens carefully, his face darkening with every word. When she finishes, there is silence. Then, he rises from his seat. This cannot be ignored, he declares. With his support, Zawadi begins to gather evidence. The villagers, once hesitant, now come forward with their own stories. They speak of the times they saw Zawadi bruised and overworked, the times they heard her cries at night, the way Nabira treated her worse than a slave. Slowly, the truth begins to unfold, and the village realizes the depth of Nabira's wickedness. Zawadi's fight for justice has begun, and this time, she is not alone. The day of reckoning arrives. Nabira, believing she still holds power over Zawadi, prepares for the forced marriage to Mimi. She orders Zawadi to get dressed, but this time, Zawadi does not obey. Instead, she walks out of the house with her head held high, her steps filled with confidence. Before Nabira can react, a group of villagers gathers outside the house. At the front stand, Chief Kamisi and the village elders. Behind them, neighbors who have watched Zawadi suffer in silence for years now come to stand beside her. The air is thick with tension as Zawadi steps forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Nabira, your time of cruelty has ended, Zawadi declares. Nabira scoffs, crossing her arms. You dare speak to me like this? You are nothing without me. Chief Kamisi raises his hand, silencing the murmurs in the crowd. His voice is firm and full of authority. Nabira, you have been accused of terrible crimes against this girl, your own stepdaughter. We have gathered testimony from the villagers, and the truth can no longer be hidden. Nabira's face turns pale, but she quickly regains her composure. Lies! These are all lies! She is trying to turn you against me. One by one, the villagers step forward. An old woman speaks of the nights she heard Zawadi crying. A young man recounts the day he saw Nabira strike Zawadi in public. A healer describes treating Zawadi's burns and how Nabira forbade her from receiving care. The crowd listens, their faces filled with anger and disgust. Nabira tries to protest, but her voice falters. The weight of the evidence crushes her. Even Zawadi's father, who had been blind to the truth for so long, looks at his wife with shame and regret. Zawadi steps closer, her eyes locking onto Nabira's. You tried to destroy me. You wanted me to be weak, to suffer forever. But you failed. I have survived. I have healed. And today, I take back my life. The village watches in silence as Nabira, once feared, now trembles before the truth. She is no longer in control. Her reign of cruelty is about to end. With the truth laid bare for all to see, the village turns against Nabira. The same people who once feared her now look at her with disgust and anger. Chief Kamisi steps forward, his voice firm and final. For the cruelty you have inflicted upon Zawadi and the wickedness you have spread in this village, you are no longer welcome here. From this day forward, you are banished. Nabira's eyes widen in shock. No, you cannot do this to me. This is my home, she cries. But no one listens. The villagers murmur in agreement with the chief's decision. Even Zawadi's father, who had been blind to Nabira's wickedness for so long, does not speak in her defense. He lowers his head in shame, knowing that his silence had allowed his daughter to suffer. Stripped of her authority and power, Nabira is forced to leave the village with nothing but the clothes on her back. As she walks away, the villagers turn their backs on her, a sign that she no longer belongs among them. No one comes to her aid, no one pities her. The same cruelty she inflicted on Zawadi now returns to her, leaving her alone and helpless. Meanwhile, Mimi, the man Nabira had tried to force Zawadi to marry, sees the strength and resilience in Zawadi. He realizes that she is no ordinary woman. She is a survivor, a fighter, someone who has endured suffering, yet still stands tall. Overcome with shame for ever considering taking part in Nabira's wicked plans, Mimi rejects the marriage arrangement and leaves the matter entirely in Zawadi's hands. Zawadi, free at last, stands before the villagers, no longer the frightened girl who once suffered in silence. She has taken back her life, and the village now looks up to her with respect. Justice has finally been served, and the darkness that once loomed over her has been lifted. With Nabira gone and justice served, peace returns to the village of Iseva. But for Zawadi, her journey is far from over. She chooses not to dwell on the past, but instead focuses on building a future where no one else will have to suffer as she did. Using the healing knowledge she learned from Mzikazi, Zawadi dedicates herself to helping others. She treats the sick, cares for the elderly, and teaches the young girls in the village about strength, courage, and self-respect. People no longer see the scars on her face as a mark of pain, but as a symbol of resilience. She becomes known not for what she endured, but for how she rose above it. As time passes, Zawadi's reputation spreads beyond Iseva. People from neighboring villages come to seek her wisdom and healing. Her name is spoken with respect, and even those who once doubted her now look up to her as a leader. She works with Chief Kamisi to bring positive changes to the village, ensuring that no child is left uneducated and no woman is left to suffer in silence. One of her greatest achievements is building a school for girls, a place where they can learn not only to read and write, but also to believe in themselves. She teaches them that true beauty comes from within, that kindness is a strength, and that justice will always find its way. The school becomes her legacy, a reminder that no matter how dark life may seem, there is always a way to rise again. The village of Iseva flourishes under Zawadi's leadership. It becomes a place of harmony and prosperity, where people live without fear, and where women are treated with dignity and respect. Zawadi, once a girl who suffered in silence, now stands as a symbol of hope and change. And so, with her past behind her and her future shining bright, Zawadi walks forward, not as a victim, but as a victor, proof that even in the face of cruelty, kindness and resilience will always triumph in the end. Zawadi's story is a powerful lesson about resilience, justice, and the way life eventually balances itself. No matter how much suffering she endured, she never let cruelty break her spirit. Instead of becoming bitter or seeking revenge, she chose to rise above the pain and become a source of healing and wisdom for others. Her journey proves that true strength is not in physical power, but in the ability to overcome hardships without losing one's kindness and dignity. Despite everything Nabira did to destroy her, Zawadi refused to be defeated. She did not let her scars define her, and she did not let society's judgment break her. Instead, she turned her pain into purpose, showing that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, patience, and the right guidance. Karma played its role, ensuring that Nabira faced the consequences of her wickedness. In the end, the fire of justice burned brighter than the fire of cruelty. Nabira lost everything because of her own greed and hatred, proving that those who harm others will eventually suffer their own downfall. This serves as a reminder that evil may seem powerful for a time, but it never truly wins. Zawadi's story also highlights the importance of forgiveness, not in forgetting the past, but in choosing not to let it control the future. She did not allow hatred to consume her heart. Instead, she focused on building a better life for herself and others. Through education, healing, and kindness, she changed the lives of many, ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she went through. Her journey teaches that no matter how dark life may seem, there is always hope. Strength does not come from revenge, but from perseverance, wisdom, and an unbreakable spirit. In the end, Zawadi's scars became a symbol, not of suffering, but of survival and triumph. Her story proves that no cruelty lasts forever, and that those who walk the path of truth and goodness will always find light at the end of their journey.